What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Today, we're going to look at teams who have had a long rest heading into the playoffs. So, as you all have heard, Andy Reid has chosen to rest his starters in this Week 18 matchup versus the Denver Broncos. That means Carson Wentz is going to get a chance to start and perhaps audition for other teams going into the 2025 season. So good for Carson Wentz. I suspect Andy Reid's going to play some starters, particularly DJ Humphries if he's available, to see how they pan out at their position. One big decision for Kansas City going into the playoffs is whether or not they choose to start Joe Thuney at left tackle and continue the momentum they have there, or go back with DJ Humphries at left tackle. We'll see how that plays out. But I just wanted to spend some time and talk about what has happened to other teams who have rested for as long as the Chiefs have or will going into the playoffs. So the Chiefs starters, key players, particularly Patrick Mahomes, will not play a game of competitive football for 24 days. So going from December 25th, their Christmas game versus the Steelers, to Saturday, January 18th, which is when I believe they will play their first playoff game. That time frame is 24 days. So what has happened to other teams who have rested for that long? How did they do in the playoffs? And let me tell you, there aren't a lot of these teams. This doesn't happen too often. The last time something similar happened was in 2023 with the Baltimore Ravens. They chose to rest their starters in Week 18. They went from December 31st to January 20th. 20 days without playing a competitive football game. The result for that team was that they lost the AFC Championship game versus Kansas City. If you remember, that was the game last year where L'Jarius Sneed had that miraculous fumble, forced fumble on the goal line, and Kansas City won that game 17-10. So that's what happened to the 2023 Ravens. The next team were the 2020 Chiefs. And the 2020 Chiefs also rested their starters Week 18. They went from December 27th to January 17th, for a time frame of 21 days. And the result for the 2020 Chiefs was that they lost the Super Bowl to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the only road Super Bowl game that ever happened. Moving on, the 2019 Ravens. They rested their starters the final week of the season. They went from December 22nd to January 11th, 20 days without playing a competitive football game with their starters. And they lost the AFC divisional round versus Tennessee. They did not win a single playoff game. In 2018, the Saints were able to rest their starters the last week of the season. This was the Drew Brees-led Saints. And they went from December 23rd to January 13th, which was a stretch of 21 days. And they would lose the NFC Championship game to the Los Angeles Rams. 2016 was the next year where it happened, and this was interesting. So in 2016, there were two teams that could choose to rest their starters the last week of the season, one in the AFC, one in the NFC. And in 2016, the Patriots the Patriots did not choose to rest their starters, but the Cowboys chose to rest their starters, and they only played Dak Prescott a handful of snaps. In that game for Dak Prescott, he did not play very well. They would go into the playoffs and lose their first and only playoff game that year in the divisional round versus Green Bay. So in that game, they chose to play Dak Prescott a portion of the time. He did not play well. That gave him some bad juju. They went into that playoff game and they lost. The Patriots, on the other hand, played all of their starters. They chose not to rest them, and they would eventually go on to win the Super Bowl versus Atlanta in a crazy come-from-behind victory. So I looked at all the number one seeds where they had a chance to rest. I didn't look at, 2 seeds, 3 seeds, so on and so forth, because that's only a week rest. These are teams that had 20 or more days of rest. And this is an unprecedented territory because I could not find anyone recently who had 24 days of rest like the Chiefs are going to have. It's a huge time frame, and so that begs the question of, should the Chiefs really rest their starters in this game? Or should they play them, keep them fresh, give them just 1 week off, and go from there? So my answer to this question is going to be based on a conversation we had together at the start of the year, and that was what could potentially derail the Chiefs' chances of a three-peat. So before the season started, I went through every single team that had a chance to three-peat and kept track of what stopped them from running it back a third time. And here's the data. Here are the aggregates. Now, keep in mind, there are only 8 times a team has had a chance to three-peat, and some of these items are repeated. So one of those 8 teams might have had 2 things that derailed their chance at a three-peat. So of those 8 teams that had the chance to three-peat, 2 times the team lost their head coach. So the head coach retired or quit. Whatever happened, the head coach decided to leave. That hurt them. 2 times, key players exited their prime. 1 time, the team going for a three-peat lost to a legendary play. That legendary play happened to be the Sea of Hands, where the Raiders, I believe, beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in a playoff game. Maybe it was the Miami Dolphins. Let me know down in the comments. But it was any given Sunday moment that derailed that team's three-peat chance. 3 times key players were injured. The most likely thing, or the most common thing that has derailed a three-peat, are injuries. So I want you to remember that whenever we're talking about resting the starters for the Chiefs. 2 times, the team ran into another budding dynasty, another team that was dynastic. 1 time, the starting quarterback retired, and so they just fell off the cliff. That was John Elway after the 1999 season, or after the 1998 season. So looking at how these apply to the Chiefs did not lose their head coach, so you can cross that one off the list. The key players exiting their prime, Travis Kelce is on the downside of his career, it seems, but he still has over 800 yards receiving. Chris Jones still is very disruptive. Patrick Mahomes still is a very good quarterback, so you can cross that one off. The legendary play, or the any given Sunday, the Chiefs are still susceptible to an any given Sunday type football game. There's no team that has ever been able to truly break free from that situation. Any given Sunday is called any given Sunday for that reason. It could happen any Sunday. So the Chiefs are not they're not invincible to getting beaten by some fluke that just happens on the field. In terms of key players being injured, right now, as of now, the Chiefs do not have a massive amount of injuries to the point where I believe they won't be able to three-peat. 2 times the three-peat, the teams going for the three-peat lost to a dynasty-esque team or a budding dynasty. I have to pose the question of, do I believe there are any other teams in the NFL right now where there's a dynasty forming? And I'm saying no, because if it was going to be the Ravens, if it was going to be the Bills, they would have done it by now. In the NFL, no head coach and quarterback pairing has won a Super Bowl after being together for more than 5 years. That is the Ravens. That is the Bills. I do not see a dynasty forming anywhere in the NFC. Right now, the big contenders in the NFC are the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings. And do you believe that any of those teams is a dynasty that's waiting to happen? I do not. So you can cross that off the list. And then the time the quarterback retired, when Elway retired, the Chiefs do not fall under that criteria. You can cross that off. So the two things that could derail the Chiefs' three-peat chances based on everything that's happened in the history of the NFL, one is that they lose to any given Sunday type play, any given Sunday type game. They cannot get around that. That's a possible thing to happen no matter what. They can't do anything to avoid that. However, the other thing they could be susceptible to is if their key players get injured, and that has been the thing that has derailed more three-peats than anything else. So the Chiefs choosing to rest their starters, in my opinion, is the right thing to do because it helps them to avoid their players getting injured in a game where they might not have even need to play or where they don't even need to play. So I agree with Coach Reed to rest Mahomes, rest as many starters as he can. Do not play your core guys. I don't want to see Trent McDuffie on the field. I don't want to see Chris Jones on the field. I don't want to see Travis Kelce on the field. I don't want to see Joe Tooney on the field. I don't want to see Creed Humphrey on the field. I don't want to see Trey Smith on the field. A lot of these players that are integral to the Chiefs' offense and defense, I don't want to see them on the field. So I don't want the Chiefs three-peat to be derailed because they lost a key player that they really needed in a game that was meaningless. Save them for the playoffs. So that's my stand on that. Coach Reed is making the right decision not to play starters Week 18. To hell with 24 days off. These are professional athletes. They know what they're doing. They have the 2020 Chiefs who had 21 days off. They lost to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl on a road Super Bowl game that never happened before. They've done it in the past. So I'm not concerned about them getting this rest and being able to perform well. I believe that they'll be just fine. So moving on, now that we talked about resting the starters, I want to talk about this other conversation that's been taking place between a lot of pundits in the NFL. And this is this whole conversation of, oh my gosh, here come the Bengals. They might get in the playoffs. Everyone look out. Nobody wants to play the Bengals. The Bengals are so good. The Bengals, if they make the playoffs, will have a 9-8 record. Barely over 500. The last time the Bengals ever did anything that was of much account was when they went to the Super Bowl in the 2021 season. That's 3 seasons ago. 3 years ago. We keep going back to this game over and over again because they are the only team that has ever beat the Chiefs in the playoffs in the AFC conference that did not have Tom Brady starting at quarterback. So that's why we keep going back to Cincinnati. The truth of the matter with Cincinnati, you want to ask yourself, who would you rather play if you're the Chiefs? Would you rather play the Bengals or the Broncos? Because if the Chiefs beat the Broncos and the Bengals win, then the Bengals are in the playoffs. If the Chiefs lose to the Broncos or the Bengals lose their game versus the Steelers this weekend, then the Broncos are in. And for me personally, I don't feel like this is not getting talked about at all. But I would rather face the Bengals in the playoffs than the Broncos. And I can't be the only person thinking this. The reason I say this is the last 2 games the Chiefs have played versus Denver, the Chiefs offense has averaged 11.5 points. They scored 16 points last time they played the Broncos and 9 points in their loss last season. So, beg my pardon, 12.5 points in their last 2 games versus the Broncos. They should have lost their last 2 games versus Denver. In addition to that, the Broncos have Sean Payton as the head coach. He has the pedigree, the experience. He's won a Super Bowl before. I feel that the Bengals don't have that. They don't have a Super Bowl winning head coach. So, all this conversation, look out for Cincinnati. If I'm the Chiefs, and me personally speaking for myself, I would be looking out more for Denver than for Cincinnati. Cincinnati can't play defense. In the playoffs, In recent years, NFL defense has really been important. That's why the Chiefs having the number one defense is huge going into the playoffs. The Broncos have a better defense by far than the Bengals. So this whole conversation of look out for Cincinnati, I'm saying look out for Denver. I'm not saying look out for Cincinnati. In fact, I would rather the Bengals were in the playoffs than the Broncos. But I think the most likely outcome is the Broncos will make the playoffs. Now's your chance. So let me know it out in the comments if you think I'm an idiot for being more concerned about the Broncos than I am the Bengals. And, personally speaking, I'm not too concerned about either team. I mean, the Chiefs are 15-1 currently, 16-1, soon to be, hopefully, if they win their last game versus the Broncos. But I think that the Chiefs would handle either team fairly well in Arrowhead in a playoff game. But let me know down in the comments how you feel about this whole, fear-mongering about Cincinnati. And also, if you made it this far in the video, hit that like button for me if you could, and subscribe if you've not done so already. We've got nothing but love and respect for all of you. But those are my two takes for this week, heading into this Week 18 matchup. I'm excited to see Carson Wentz and some of the players that don't get a lot of glory play in this game. I want to see an injury-free game. Don't play any starters you don't want to get hurt. And in addition to that, I'm not as scared of the Bengals as the rest of the NFL pundits are. I'm more concerned about what Denver's doing, mostly because of their defense and that, defense travels in the playoffs. So I would rather play the Bengals than the Broncos, to be honest with you. But that's my take. This is Gary signing out. Y'all have a great rest of your week. Happy New Year. May your days be cheery and bright, and you have a wonderful start to your year. This is Gary signing out.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.